Hey everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm here today to talk with you about focal point stamping. Now this is a very easy technique and I'm just going to walk you through it. So today I'm using the Neighborhood number 2 stamp set from Two Paper Divas. This has got some great houses in it. It's great for a new neighbor card, a new business, whatever you might need, a new kind of welcome to the neighborhood card. This fits the bill. So I'm just going to lay out these stamps, and that first one that I laid out, I want fully on my paper. I don't want any of it cut off. It's going to be my main center of focus whenever I do coloring. But the other ones I'm going to stamp around this and fill up the entire panel with these stamps. But they're going to remain black and white. And you'll see how I'm going to do this in just a moment. It's really very simple. It's just coloring. So I'm using my Memento Tuxedo black ink here. You can use whatever black ink corresponds with your coloring medium, and I'm just going to stamp these down. Now I did double stamp this. I didn't really need to. I didn't double stamp any of my other ones, but I wanted really nice dark lines on that first stamp. So I cleaned off my stamps really well, and then I'm going to move them around and stamp these and fill in all that white space. And I'm stamping the 3 of them all at once too, just to speed things along, and that's why I'm using my MISTI. I can lay these out, I can move them around, then when I have them positioned where I want, I close the lid, and then I can just flip that lid back over and stamp them down. Now sometimes when I'm using the MISTI like this and I've got my paper kind of in the center, those magnets aren't quite strong enough. They are very strong, but not quite strong enough to hold them exactly in place. So I just stick my bone folder in there to kind of hold my paper right where I want it, and then I can just lift it up and stamp it down. You can see I'm going to slide that right back in and hold my paper while I lift up my lid. That way it doesn't move on me at all. So I'm just going to finish up here. I've got another set of stamping to do. One more time and then just one more little stamp after this, and my entire panel will be full. Now you can see every other stamp that I have stamped is hanging off the paper other than that first one. And that's kind of where I want this at. You could do this with smaller stamps and have some more on your paper that are fully. I just like it to look better this way, with all the other ones are kind of half stamps or quarter stamps here and there, and just one main focal image. And if you're feeling a little, I guess, adventurous, if you want to call it, you could always use a different color ink too. I'm just using black because I want to keep it kind of a black and white themed card here. So I'll just finish moving these stamps around, and I am moving them quite a bit. I want to fill in as much white space as possible and not have a whole lot of space between them. I'll stick my bone folder in there just to hold that paper in place so my stamps don't pull it up. And again, just inking this up and stamping it down. Now after this time stamping, I just had one little section, so I just stamped it down very quickly and filled in that last little bit there. I won't show you that part. But then once that was done, it was time to move on to coloring. Now that first one that I stamped down that is completely on the paper is going to be the stamp that I fill in with color. I'm using my alcohol markers. I suggest using whatever coloring medium you're most comfortable with, because when you're only coloring one image, all the focus is going to be on that. So I put in a little bit more time, a little bit more effort with this one just because it's just one image. So I did spend a little bit more time coloring this. I'm also using 3 colors. On an image this small, normally I would just use about 2, but in this case I want a little bit more shading, a little bit more depth. So I'm adding in that 3rd color just for a little something extra. I'm keeping my colors pretty simple here. I used a yellow for the house, and this is more of a business kind of house. It's got a welcome sign on the door, so you could use this for a business, new business card. So I will just fill in these little images, finish this up, and I'm using the very tip of my marker to fill in these littlest spaces here, because you can see this does have some little tiny narrow spaces, so you really want to get in there with just the tip of it. Now I used 2 different sizes of banner dies just to cut out some quick banners from coordinating cardstocks that matched the color I'd colored the house. I cut out 4, and on my black one I went ahead and stamped down "Welcome to the Neighborhood" in Versamark ink and heat embossed that with some white embossing powder. Now I'm just going to layer up these stamps, or these banners, excuse me. But you can see I am keeping the adhesive right on the edge of that banner. I do not want any towards the edge of the cardstock, and you'll see why in just a moment. But I'm layering these up. I'm not being too careful here. I want it to look kind of thrown together a little bit, so I'm not overthinking it. I'm just putting these down. I'll finish up with that "Welcome to the Neighborhood" sentiment banner, and then I'm going to use this die. This is from Lawn Fawn. It is their Stitch Border collection, and this is just going to put tiny little dots along the left side of my paper where I line this up. Now these dies add some faux stitching, and most of the time I would just run this through and leave it as is. But today I'm actually going to use these as a guide to do some hand stitching. Now you can use a sewing machine for this next part. I really don't like to put paper through my sewing machine. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with the sewing machine. I'm not comfortable with putting my paper through it at all. I'm more comfortable doing hand sewing. So that's what I'm going to do. By all means, if you would rather sew, do that. So I'm using some floss here, and this it's a 6-thread floss. So you just cut off a chunk of it, and then you can pull out 1 thread, and that's what I'm using. I've doubled it over through a needle, and then I'm just going to start hand stitching this. I am just using a running stitch, so I'll go up through 1 hole and down the next, and then come back up and then go down in the next one. It's a very simple stitch. You could do a different stitch if you're more comfortable with that. You could really go fancy and do anything you might want to do here, but I'm keeping mine nice and simple. So I'm going to zoom in here in just a moment so you can really see what I'm doing here. I've come up through 1, and now I'm going to go right back down in the next one. And this die has created these little guides for me to follow. So all of my stitches are going to be evenly spaced, which I love. Now if you don't have the die, you could always do this just by sight, by hand, use little pencil marks, use a ruler. This just makes it so much more easier for me, and it also allows me to get that kind of perfect stitch, which just feeds my perfectionism, I guess. Now once I got to the banners, and I'm going through about 4 layers of paper here, it gets a little tough, but I found if I used kind of the weight of my fingers and just pressing it down with the needle up against my cutting board in the background there, I could press that needle through without any problem. Just be careful and don't hurt yourself. So once I got through the entire panel, I'm just going to come back up and do this the other way now, so it fills in all my little leftover stitches here and gives me a nice even stitch all the way up and down the panel. Now you could by all means end with just the every other stitch kind of look that was given once you went through it once, but I'm just going to go back through. What this is also going to do is wherever I didn't have adhesive on those banners up top, this is going to hold those banners in place now. And I also didn't put any adhesive right there just because you're already going through 4 layers of paper with your needle. Once you add an adhesive on there, and you have to go through that as well, not only is it harder, but the adhesive is going to stick to your needle. It's just going to be a big mess. So if you can avoid it, I highly suggest doing that. And that goes for if you're using your sewing machine as well. Don't put adhesive through there. So once I finished up running that back up the side again, I'm just going to go ahead and use some adhesive here and tape this thread right down in place on the back of my panel. You can leave these loose if you like that look better, but I wanted to tape mine down so there's no chance of it coming apart. Then I'll just snip off that little extra, and I'm also going to use my long blade scissors just to trim up those banners so they're flush with the panel. The only thing that was left to do on this card was to put some double-sided adhesive on a piece of fun foam, and I did cut this a little bit smaller so it didn't go up against that stitching at all. That stitching will add just a little bit more dimension on that side, so I just bumped it right up against there, and that way I don't have a lopsided card. Now I'm just going to peel off the backing paper on the other side of the fun foam, and I will mount this directly onto an A2 top folding white card base. And that finishes up the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this technique. It's really easy to do and really a lot of fun. You can also customize it to your own style, and it will also go with any occasion card you might want to make. As always, I will leave you guys with this close-up of the card and just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below. Thank you guys for watching today, and happy crafting!